Hello and welcome to Africa Thinks. Today we'll be speaking with a very important candidate from Uganda. He is a musician, a very popular musician, a presidential candidate who challenged President Yoweri Museveni in the last general election. He rejected the outcome of the election, saying the election was fraught with irregularities and rigging, and rejected the outcome totally. I have with me here Robert Chagulanyi, popularly known as BOBIWINE, who is also a former member of parliament, so he's also a legislator. How are you doing, Robert? BOBIWINE.
I'm all right, my brother. Pleasure speaking to you.
Same here, same here. So you are here in Washington. What is your main aim of coming here in Washington, to Washington?
Well, I left my country on a run for my life. As you might have seen that my house was raided, my wife assaulted, and my family members also tortured because there was an order to kill me by the Chief of Defense Forces, who also happens to be the son of Uganda 40-year-old dictator General Yoweri Museveni. So I left my country running for my life. However, I'm also in the United States to try engage with various leaders, various personalities, senators, and fellow Ugandans as well. With the fellow Ugandans and leaders, I'm trying to galvanize the forces of change that are struggling to change our country back home. But with the leaders and administration in Washington, I'm trying to persuade them to change their policy of supporting the dictatorship back home. You will notice that the Ugandan dictatorship, like many other dictatorships in Africa, have their lifeline in Washington and in Europe because they are funded by America and the Western world. So we are trying to cut that life link to ensure that they are not funded to oppress the people of Uganda and Africa.
I heard you say that you are not going to negotiate your freedom away. What does that mean?
I thought I spoke it in clear terms. I am not going to negotiate my freedom or my rights because no sane person negotiates that. My rights are inherent according to the Constitution of Uganda, and they are not granted by the state. And neither is my freedom. And this is to make it clear that I'm not a kind of person that rejects any negotiation. No, I believe in dialogue, but in transparent and principled dialogue, not transactional.
Are you ready to negotiate with President Museveni and his government to ensure that there's peace and that Ugandans will live in peace? Are you ready to have negotiations with the government?
I thought I answered that question before you asked it. But however, I must remind you that our forefathers, and to quote the great Nelson Mandela, taught us that you cannot put your boot on my neck and then say we should negotiate. No, it's only free men that negotiate.
So let me ask you, because last time I heard some Ugandans say that you and President Museveni basically have a passion for Uganda. He wanted a change. He took guns. He went to the bush and came to power by the barrel of the gun. You want change as well. So the change mandate or the change that you seek, both of you are on the same playing field. How do you respond to such comparison between you and President Museveni in terms of wanting change to happen in Uganda?
I would definitely not dismiss the fact that once upon a time, General Museveni loved, or he seemed to have loved his country. At my age, he was saying exactly what I'm saying, and probably even more eloquent. But as we've been taught by history that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, General Museveni said that Africa's problem in general, and Uganda in particular, are the leaders that overstay in power. He said this 40 years ago. Unfortunately, 40 years later, he's still in power. When he was pursuing change, he picked up guns, and more than 500,000 Ugandans died in his pursuit of what he called change. Unfortunately, 40 years down the road, we realized that this blood was shed in vain. I'm passionate about change, but I'm also aware that life matters. The difference between us is that he believes in violence and we don't believe in violence, because we have seen what violence does. Violence, besides breeding more violence, it creates a sense of entitlement where those that cause change through violence always feel like they own and they're entitled. And this is what has shown again and again and again from the times of Robert Mugabe and now Mnangagwa and to the times of Yoweri Museveni. So while we pursue change, we believe that non-violence is stronger than violence. And that was why we chose to pursue that line.
Now, in your earlier submission, you talked about the fact that you had to run away from the country due to your life being threatened or your life being in danger. But some people are questioning that because they said you said your life was in danger, but you were constantly on social media platforms videotaping yourself talking in some areas or in some parts of Uganda before leaving. And that they said this is just a mere publicity stunt just to demonize the country and make the president unpopular among Ugandans, and that you lost the election fair and square. You are just, trying to blackmail the government using some of these videos that you are making just to undercut the international support the government has. What say you?
By the fact that we are communicating virtually using the internet, it makes me suppose that you have been watching the tweets of the Chief of Defense Forces in Uganda, who is also the son of General Museveni, who has publicly confessed to killing 24 members of my party and saying that I should be the 25th dead body. I'm sure you have seen him promise and indeed fulfilling the promise of abducting my people, beginning with my bodyguard, who was abducted and tortured under his basement. And he did this live on social media. I am sure you are aware that my house was raided on the 16th of January, just one day after the election, and I had to run away from my home. I am sure that you have seen that on the 25th of January, again, my house was raided and my wife beaten so bad that she ended up in hospital and she had to escape from the hospital bed to sneak out of the country. I am sure you have seen that. And anybody that calls this a publicity stunt, I am not sure what to call this. My home was taken over and occupied by the military until yesterday, when out of shame and out of international pressure, they had to leave my country. Now, if raiding, torturing my family, and occupying my house after ramshackling it is a publicity stunt, I don't know, is it my publicity stunt or the publicity stunt of the Ugandan military? I ran out of the country. I ran out of my house, but I was able, just like I was able to outsmart and beat the Ugandan military, which had surrounded my house, to leave my house. I was able to beat them to close to 2 months when I was within the country. But I had, like I mentioned, that I ran out of my house and was in hiding to be sure that I communicate to the world. I'm sure if I stayed, I would either be dead or completely tortured. I would not be able to communicate to the world. But ever since I left, I've been able to offer leadership to the forces of change. And indeed, I'm able to communicate to the world like I'm doing now. So if me being able to communicate to the world and expose the atrocities of the Ugandan regime is a publicity stunt, then I don't think that's a bad publicity stunt, is it?
Well, some people are accusing you of mudding or dirtying up the image of Uganda as a partner to Western countries to bring stability and peace and political peace in the East Africa region, and that by constantly bombarding the international community with what they say fake news of human rights violations and harassment is basically mudding and dirtying the international image of Uganda, basically preventing people from coming to invest in Uganda there.
Yeah, but if there's anything or anybody that is denting the image of the country, those are the atrocities that are being done in our country. You know, where the actions of Adolf Hitler are the ones denting the image of Germany then, or those that exposed it. It's very unfortunate that we seem to we keep having gaslighting, where the victim is demonized while the culprit is trying to play innocent. You know, the tortures, the extrajudicial murders that are going on in Uganda are not, orchestrated by me, but by the regime. On the 18th and 19th of November 2020, there was a massacre in the country. I did not kill those people. The Ugandan government killed those people. We went into an election which you and all the world saw turned into a military operation. I did not torture the Ugandans. I did not kill the Ugandans. The Ugandan regime killed the Ugandans. The Electoral Commission gave me a security detail, but at the end of the campaign, the entire security detail that was given to me was arrested, and now they are detained just because they did not spy on me. I did not do that. The regime did that. As we speak right now, my personal assistant called Sheriff Naja had his house raided and his wife abducted. The wife of Sheriff Naja is now missing for more than 2 weeks. I did not abduct her. The Ugandan military abducted her. And this happened on camera and we showed it to the world. Now the blame does not go to me. The blame goes to those that instead that are charged with the duty and mandate of guarding and protecting Ugandans, but instead abducting them and torturing them. If the Ugandan regime wants a good image for the country, let them respect human rights. Let them respect democracy. Let them respect the rule of law.
You talked about the election. Some people are wondering whether you legitimately won the election as you claim, because they argue if you have evidence of election, mismanagement, irregularities, or rigging like you claim, where is the evidence? They argue to present it before the court of law, to argue your case in court, rather than just saying that the elections were rigged without providing any empirical proof to back up your allegation, they argue. What do you say to such critics?
We had a general election on the 15th of January 2026, but by the 14th of January, more than 400 leaders of my party had been abducted and they were missing. These include two of my deputy presidents, my deputy president of Northern Uganda and Western Uganda, who are women. They were abducted and held in a military barracks in Kasenyi, commanded by General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is the head of the security forces. They were missing for 2 weeks until they resurfaced again, and they told their ordeal to the world. On the day of election, 15th of January, my deputy president for the Buganda region, the most populous region, had his house raided, and 10 people were shot and killed in his house. Let me say this again. 10 people were shot and killed in the military, 8 of whom were women. They were killed by Ugandan military and the police. He was later picked up and is in prison. Many others were picked up. Majority of our election observers and election agents were picked, and many of them are still missing, while others were kept in prison for various days and later on freed without no charge. So, was that an election? In my opinion, and I believe in the opinion of any sane person, was not an election, but a military operation.
So let me ask you this question, because some Ugandans have been telling me that, like your former colleague, Dr. Chisa Besige, who is in jail right now, he left the FDC, handed over to somebody, endorsed somebody to run as a presidential candidate. They are wondering if the leadership you provide will also get you there to support somebody else to peacefully contest against the government, as they argue, or the ruling National Resistance Movement, NRM. They argue if you will have that capacity to see Uganda as bigger than yourself, to support somebody else, because they argue that you have fallen out with a lot of people who have capacity, who you believe could equally be have that capacity to run as presidential candidate of the National Unity Platform, your party, NUP. What say you?
Now, Peter, I am glad. First of all, you seem to be in a rush to sweep me off the matters that are concerning and are pertinent right now. But I'm very glad you mentioned Dr. Kizza Besigye. Dr. Kizza Besigye is a veteran political leader who was close to 2 years ago, abducted from Kenya by the Ugandan regime and illegally brought to Uganda, charged illegally in a military court, and now he continues to be in prison. So that should further show you the kind of the regime that you seem very, very eager to protect or have its atrocities swept under the under the carpet.
No, no,
When
I'm
I
not.
was
I'm
showing
not
up,
sweeping. I'm
when
just.
I was showing up, yeah, I didn't know. I was not dying to be president. My desire is to have a free country, to have a country that works for everybody. We have a dictatorship. We have a president that has been in power for 40 years and counting. And that is our urgent fight right now. Our fight is to see democracy in our lifetime. Our fight is to have an election where people have the right to vote, where a vote counts. We are fighting for a vote right now.
My question is, what are you willing to do? You are talking about the fight for democracy, peace, and the respect of human rights. The question I'm asking is, what are you willing to do in your capacity, peacefully, to see these enumerations actualized in
Everything,
Uganda?
everything. I am willing to do everything moral and constitutional to see a free, peaceful, and democratic Uganda. That is my dream. I'm a firm believer in democracy. And I must tell you that I'm leading a generation that is full of capable, talented, and qualified young people, which young people we strongly believe will be able to usher our country to greater heights.
You called for sanctions to be placed on certain people in Uganda, targeted sanctions, as you call them. How feasible is this? And do you think the people you are having negotiations with will impose those sanctions that you seek?
Well, the people that I'm talking to, not having negotiations with, but talking to, are the ones that have funded the regime, that have supported the regime for the last 40 years. You'll notice that for a long time, the Ugandan regime has been receiving up to $1 billion US in terms of aid. That is America alone. And there's also the UK and the the UK and the European Union. These are people that profess values of democracy, of human rights, and the rule of law. Our demand is one: stop funding our operation. We are not asking them to come and save us. No, we are telling them that we can fight for ourselves because our fight is in Uganda. But we cannot fight against $1 billion US a year. We cannot fight against the French guns. We cannot fight against the pounds that are flowing into Uganda. We are only asking them to tag the aid that they give to the regime of Uganda to the values, to condition it to democracy and human rights. And I've said it many times that the standard of human rights in Uganda should be the same in Europe. I have not seen European or American leaders standing shoulder to shoulder with European dictators like Lukashenko of Belarus. So we are asking them to treat Africa at the same level of democracy and human rights like they do to the rest of the world.
With this fight that you've taken upon yourself and rallying the young people of Uganda, what do you think are the prospects of success that you see on the ground so far?
If you have been following what's in Uganda, I'm sure you have seen how massively the people of Uganda, especially the young people, are yearning for change. When we went into this election, we were not oblivious that we are under a military regime. But we went in with a belief that even if the opportunity and the possibility of change is 1%, it is worth the fight. And indeed, the world saw the young and the old, the rich and poor showing up to express desire for change. We are confident that it will happen. We always look back in history. Mandela taught us that it always seems impossible until it's done. We have seen examples of countries that had dictators that were more funded and were more able and had stronger armies, like Sudan, like Egypt, but they fell under the unwavering pressure of the people. And we know that the regime, the dictatorship in Uganda will fall. There's never a rise and rise of a dictator. No, it is always the rise and fall. And therefore, I can guarantee you that it will never be the rise and rise of General Museveni. No, there was the rise, and now there is the decline, which will ultimately become the fall of General Museveni.
Talking about a decline, what do you mean a decline? Because the last time I checked, the recent elections, showed that the President Yoweri Museveni got up close to about 70% or so. So what is the decline? Explain to me what the decline
Well,
about means.
probably the last time you checked, you did not check right. All right? We have an electoral commission that it is completely in the hands of the regime. An electoral commission that is not going to look at what the people vote, at what the people say at the polling stations. I'm sure you are aware that the internet was switched off 2 days to the election. You've not seen that in your country. It happened in Uganda. I'm sure you have seen the military completely taking over the election. And what came out of the polling stations is not what was declared by Mr. Byabakama, the electoral commissioner, the head of the electoral commission, who is a Museveni puppet. That is not what he did, what happened. So I'll tell you that what you saw declared was just, a declaration of the military. He was just ordered to declare what was declared. I'll tell you that majority of the members of parliament in our party won on all polling stations in the capital city. I'll give an example of Alex Waiswa, of David Lewis Rubongoya, and others that won on all polling stations, but they were orders from the regime about who should be declared and who should not be declared. So what was declared by the Electoral Commission is completely fake, is completely wrong, and does not in any way reflect the will of the people of Uganda.
Now, before we go, Robert Chagulanyi, otherwise known as, or popularly known as BOBIWINE, concerns have been raised about the respect for human rights in the East Africa region and parts of Africa. As a main opposition leader who has been championing and calling for the rights of individuals across the continent to be respected, what say you about this? Because people in East Africa have been complaining for some time about right abuses. However, the governments of these countries are saying that their mandate is to protect the life and property of people, as well as maintain law and order. And some of you opposition leaders act as agitators to cause disaffection and undermine the territorial integrity of these countries. So what say you about these back and forth as we see it from here?
You will notice that all those words are just, big English words that are being thrown around to cover up for evil. I have just told you that in the most recent days, my personal assistant called Sheriff Naja had his house raided because the military thought I was hiding in his house. His wife was abducted. She is missing for 2 weeks now. We don't know what is happening to her. And we have a regime in Uganda that is notorious of torturing people, killing people, and raping women in custody. Many young men have come out of custody, complaining of being sodomized in custody. Now, this is a regime that abducts people and keeps them missing for weeks, sometimes months. Some have not shown up again. We have 18 families that are demanding for their people. They've not shown up again. We have seen others that show up gravely tortured, medieval torture. This is what we're dealing with. It is happening in real life. And I expect young Africans like yourselves to be concerned, because when this is happening in Uganda, it is a signal that it can happen anywhere else. People used to think it's only happening in Uganda, but abductions have been now, exported to Kenya, exported to Tanzania, and before you know, they're going to be exported to your country. I've always said it to all people, whether you are a politician or doctor or journalist like you, that nobody is safe until we are all safe.
Thank you very much, Robert Chagulanyi, popularly called BOBIWINE, for joining us today here on Africa Things. We wish you the best, and we hope peace returns to Uganda.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.